My name is Ken Cousins, and I am the foreman of the Grand Jury of the California Republic. And today we are here to accomplish several things. We are here, as I said, to convene the Riverside County Settlement. And as we go through the course of the day, I will explain to you what that is. I will also be filling you in on the foundation historical context, both in terms of very recent times and a little bit broader in terms of the last several hundred years. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the history because we're here for a very specific and focused purpose, which will be explained here very shortly. Additionally, because of the fortuitousness of my being introduced to Rob just the last few days, we are very fortunate in the fact that we are live streamed. This is going out over the internet, and I am under the presumption that we are being watched by quite a number of people, that we sent the announcement out and invited people to observe what we're doing today, because this is one of the very first counties that is going to convene formally and sign the Constitution that we're here to sign. And yes! And as the day unfolds and I explain things and build the foundation of what we're doing here, the historical context, the context in law, and all of the rest, and how this applies to current events, how this applies to the restoration of the original Republic of the United States of America, we're going to be filling in details that we're recording. Besides being live, we're going to record this, and it will be then made available to be instructive to as many people as want to access this. I'm not sure the exact number, but there's a number of thousands of counties in this country. They are all eventually going to do the same process. And this will become clear to you as I explain it, what the significance of the process is. So I'm going to go into a fair amount of detail as to the procedure, the whys, the whats, and the hows, so that both you understand it, and in the recording and making it available to others, that they will be able to follow suit. So, to begin, we are all generally aware of the fact that things are not very good in this country. Anybody disagree with that fact? Does everybody, or let me see the show of hands of people who understand what it means when I refer to the corporation? Very educated crowd. Anybody here not aware of what that means when I refer to the corporation? One hand. Okay, a few hands. Well, for your benefit, today, what operates and functions as what appears to be the government of this country is in fact actually a corporation. A corporation functioning and operating in commerce, and it has a historical context. First, before that corporation came into existence, this country was founded on the principles of what a republic is. It was established as a republic, and it was a union of sovereign republics. So what we refer to as states were, in fact, in law, each one of them was a sovereign republic. They came together initially under Articles of Confederation in 1783 to create a type of a union, but there was no national identity. So, and there were certain issues that were a problem there. Issues with commerce, issues with international law and relationships among nations. And so that had to be corrected. The correction of that was the establishment of the United States by and through what we call the Constitution of and for the United States. That Constitution was a political social contract with an entity that we now know as the federal government. It was limited in power, scope, jurisdiction, and authority to a very, very restricted area, both geographically and in terms of law, function, and authority, in terms of jurisdiction. The history from that point forward over the next 100, 150 years was the conversion of that very limited jurisdiction to a structure that eventually would overlay the entire country, would turn it inside out. It would federalize everyone and everything. And essentially that took place, started in earnest in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s. And in 1871, an act was passed on February 23rd by Congress, which incorporated parts of the District of Columbia. And within several years, that was fused with the federal identity as the United States, and so the United States at that point became a corporation. Just prior to that, something was passed known as the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment established a new type of citizen, who was a United States citizen. Most people today, if you walk out on the street and you ask them, are you a United States citizen, they respond by saying, but of course. But that wasn't the case over 100 years ago. Today we're not going to really go into a lot of detail. We have other areas of focus, but I'm just laying out the foundation. The gist of it, though, is that the 14th Amendment established a United States citizen and established one very key point, which was there's a line in the 14th Amendment that says no person has the ability or authority to challenge the validity of the national debt. So what you have there is the beginning of what Rob referred to in his opening prayer as the bonding of the American population. Because that federal corporation would then start a process from the 1870s until today of an ever-increasing level of federalized debt, to which the American population would be attached as what we call bonded surety, the guarantors of that debt. And we hear today in the news and lots of political discussion about the unsupportable level of the current debt. And it's growing exponentially. And it was set that way for a purpose, so that the entire population, everyone and everything in this entire country, from this mic stand to this building, to every car that is driven, would be collateralized, pledged, guaranteed, bonded, surety, underwriting that perpetual debt system. What's the purpose of it? For a very small group on this planet to own everyone and everything. But fortunately, it hasn't gone quite according to that plan. We're not going to talk today as to the why, the who, or the what of philosophically why it hasn't gone that way. But in my point of view, simply said, the population, both of this country and the world, is beginning to wake up. And I would say that everybody here is in a process of awakening and having the veils of illusion removed from your eyes and your ears and your mind and your heart to actually see what's going on. And in that process, over the last 20 to 40 years, there's been a group of men and women who have diligently studied the law and began to uncover and to unwind the incredibly complexified system of what we call law, most people refer to as law, but in fact is nothing more than corporate rules. Corporate rules that we would call codes, ordinances, and statutes. But those laws, or those legal structures, are what is used to bind us. And the key to understand about that is throughout history, and I've been studying history for many decades, and I've seen one fundamental principle that runs through all of history, which is that there are two fundamental lineages that have been structured over time to bind the people. One is what's called the line of the king, the other is the line of the priest. The king is who controls and owns the land. So if all the people are lifted off the land and put into a containment field, and all of the land where the real abundance comes from, where all the food, all the water, everything that sustains life is owned and controlled by the king, then the people are nothing more than serfs that are given permission to be under a limited self-sufficiency at the bequest of the king. Okay? The other is the line of the priest, and this has nothing to do per se with spirituality or religion, but the bottom line is the line of the priest institutes and binds the people in the law. And what we have today is a secularized system of the king and the priest, where the king is basically controlled and structured around the federal government, and the line of the priest is this entirety of all what we call legal structure, codes, statutes, and all the rest of that. Underlying those codes and statutes is something called the Uniform Commercial Code. And underlying the commercial code is something called contract. How do we get bound to all of those codes and statute and have a presumption of obligation that we must follow all of them, and have the mechanism that creates what we call public funds, what we would refer to as money, be created over and over again by the bonded nature of the people having to abide by those commercial codes and statutes and be controlled by them. So that's the basic outline of the history that I wanted to present and have you understand as we now look at the context of what are we doing with the Republic. As I said, this country was founded originally as a republic. And every state, the original 13 states, were guaranteed by that Constitution a Republican form of government. And in a Republican form of government, every individual is indeed and in fact a sovereign. And the sovereign is who stands on the land. So it removed, at least temporarily, that control of the king in controlling the land. And that was upheld and understood in the early court cases, Supreme Court cases from the 1790s onward. So the name of the game was to turn it upside down, inside out, and lift the people off the land and bind them to an ever-increasing level of debt and codified legalisms that people refer to as laws. Remove us from the Republic. So what I described the Republic to be is, imagine in 1789, there was a big mansion, and it had 50 rooms, and it had a big basement. And in each of the rooms was a small little area where the servants worked and lived in order to take care of the inhabitants of the room. And originally 13 of those rooms were occupied, but each of the other 37 were guaranteed on equal footing the same guarantee of a Republican form of government. The people occupied those rooms, and together the 50-room mansion was the Republic of the United States of America. The 13 original republics came together and created a union, and created by the Constitution a very structured, limited form for the servants in the basement to support all of the other rooms and to support the entire structure. That would be the federal government. Progressively, all 50 rooms were occupied. Actually, that's not quite technically true. By the Civil War, 35 of the rooms were occupied. After the Civil War, the southern states were moved out of their rooms. They were no longer functioning as republics. They were effectively conquered nations, conquered by the federal entity, and forced to start complying with federalized rules and regulations. By 1913, we have the creation of the Federal Reserve, and in 1933, the United States Corporation was put into bankruptcy in relationship to the Federal Reserve. And that's where we began the progression of moving everybody out of the house. But the thing is that house, or that mansion with 50 rooms, never went away. It still existed. And what has happened in the course of this year is that a small number of men and women, very educated, at least some of the key people and the leaders who studied, as I said, over the last 20 to 40 years, to unwind the history and understand the law, and many have paid a significant personal price. Many have gone to jail, many have lost their fortunes, some have lost their lives, but persistently and progressively we have collectively decoded the obfuscation of the truth. And what is emerging in this process is the awakening of beginning to have the mass awakening in this country opening up to the truth. So at a certain point here in the progression of the rapid expansion and the imminent collapse of the corporation, which is what we've been watching for the last 5 to 10 years, in my way of looking at it, there was an imperative that emerged from the collective of who we all are. What is that imperative? The imperative was to reoccupy and re-inhabit the mansion, the Republic. And that's what we're doing here today. So briefly, the history of that is that a small number of individuals, on the forefront were 4 men who came together and made an announcement through an internet radio program that was a regular weekly program in late January, that imperative of the necessity of coming together to re-inhabit the Republic was an absolute. That if we did not do that, the results of what was unfolding in this country, and hence in the whole world, would be cataclysmic, certainly for a vast number of people. And so that process began. They referred to themselves, there was 4 men who referred to themselves as the guardian elders. And they put out something called the Restore America Plan. And they had a number of people throughout the entire country who became aware of this and wanted to participate, sign an oath as a guardians of the free republic, something like that. Not quite exactly like that. Close enough for government work. But it was called the Restore America Plan, and the intent was very simple. The functional aspect of it was that in order to occupy the Republic, that a minimum level within a certain structure and context of individuals had to come together in every state. The focus of that, and the vehicle for that, for lack of a better term, was a de jure grand jury. De jure means of law, based on law. What we have when I refer to the corporation is we have a de facto government entity. It's of fact, it operates factually, but it is not lawful. It is not based on the original basis of law that was established by the foundational documents of this country. So the de jure grand jury is the 4th branch of government. It is of, by, and for the people. It is the ultimate authority, and in fact, it is the highest form of law in this country in this form. The other 3 branches of government are constituted by the Constitution, both state and federal, to be the servants of the people.
Amen.
The people reserve their capacity and their authority, which is absolute, to hold and institute their law. And the grand jury, the de jure of law grand jury, is the body of the people, no matter how small the number is, that were required to come together in each of the states to re-inhabit and reform the Republic. That number was minimally 27 for each state, with 8 alternates who also were considered part of the grand jury, so 35 per state. And by the end of March, all 50 states had properly formed the grand jury. Each individual signed an oath. There were multiple originals created on their documents, and that was put together and documented properly to be the coming together, the re-inhabiting of each of the state republics. When that was accomplished by late March, the individuals who were leading this process then put together presentments that were presented on March 29th and 30th, or 30th and 31st, to all of the state governors. And it was basically a demand on the governors for them to, they were given 3 days to come into and swear an oath to the de jure body of the restored republics. If you go back into the archives of quite a number of the news media, like the TV news, CNN, Fox, and so forth, you will see, if you look at those dates, starting on March 29th, for about 5-6 days, there was actual public recognition of this going on. Of course, it was spun into the negative, as they will do. Other things happened to try and demonize it and what have you, but it never got any traction on that basis. It didn't get traction because it was done properly and lawfully. Quite a number of the people who participated in that were actually visited by FBI. They were interviewed, and in most cases, perhaps in all cases, those FBI agents actually left those interviews more enlightened than they were before. I will definitely say, and I know for an absolute fact, that since that time, as this process has unfolded and matured over the last 6-7 months, that more and more awareness within those entities and agencies, including the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, has increased. So there is nothing untoward in terms of any legal backlash or ramification for what we're doing.
Amen.
And why is that? Because we're doing it based on and within the context of the law, of the original structure of how this country was established. So I'm going to start on the basis, read you something you might be familiar with. That is the sum total, really, and in actual fact, of what the authority that we are able to do what we're doing is based on. It's called the Unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read a pertinent part, the beginning. In Congress, July 4, 1776. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to that separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these states of America, formerly known as colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. So, is anybody here in disagreement that we have long suffered under an abusive and progressively despotic system of governance that no longer represents the people and no longer has any similitude to what was instituted 230 some odd years ago? Anybody have an objection to that premise? Okay. I think if we went and we actually removed the controlled media and we had interviews with the entirety of this population, we would have a plus 80-90% agreement with that fact. Okay, but the media keeps spinning the story that we're okay. We're not. Okay, and we have suffered long, and we have abundantly identified and enumerated the reasons for why we're doing what we're doing in individual cases across this land and in huge numbers, individually and collectively. It's on the collective record of what we now have in the internet. You can spend a lifetime, many lifetimes, reading the detail of the summary and the specifics of the abuses leading to the absolute despotism that we have suffered under and that continues to this day. So the one difference, though, between now and then is that we do not seek to change or overthrow the existing corporate de facto government. We are neutral to that government. We are at peace with that government. And we operate as neutral and non-belligerent and at peace. That's both important legally, morally, lawfully, and all the rest of that. And we make that clear in everything we do. We are simply re-inhabiting the original form that never went away. We are reoccupying that mansion and all 50 of the rooms. And we are reinstituting a structure that is recognized worldwide as a lawful and properly seated government.
Amen. Right on. Yes. Yes.
So, since that time, from late March, early April, a lot happened. There was a bit of a flurry. There were certain things in the Restore America plan that were intended to take place. They did not happen. People at times have complained, well, you said you were going to do this, this, and this. Well, you know what? This is a dynamic, ever-changing, organic process, and it has evolved very rapidly in the last 4 to 6 months. What it has arrived at, in my opinion, is better, more complete, more qualified than what was thought to be the goal or the structure that would have been put in place with the original Restore America plan. I'm not going to go into the detail of what happened between late March and, say, July, August. There was a few points of separation. It ended up by July or early August that of the 4 original guardian elders, only 1 remained. 1 left earlier on, like about May. There was a disagreement between them, and he was asked to leave, and he graciously did. He has gone on to do the work that he does. Of the 3 that were left, there was another disagreement. That disagreement centered on the fact that around that time, middle of the summer, Mr. Tim Turner, who was one of the 4 original guardian elders, began to announce to our collective body, at that time it was the grand juries. It was roughly 1,350 to 1,500 people. We were meeting once and most of the time twice a week on large-scale conference calls. Originally they were intended to be jury training because we had convened as de jure grand juries, so we were moving forward on that basis. And Tim came on and he told us that he had been contacted and brought into a fold, if you will, became aware of the fact that there were groups on this planet who have control of very, very substantial amounts of assets. Hard assets in the form of metals, precious metals, as well as currency assets. And they basically said that we recognize what you're doing, We recognize who you are. We feel you are the person to be the trustee of these assets that we are hereby pledging to the restored republic. But there was a subject to clause, there was a caveat, which was you have to formally, properly reform and properly seat lawful government. The grand juries were not sufficient, but the grand juries were the starting point, because the grand juries at that point were and remain the convened or assembled body politic of each of the 50 restored republics. It doesn't matter that the number was minute compared to the population. The body politic and the lawful Jural assembly of law had come together formally and properly. And so Tim announced that to us, and he said, I'm bringing back to you as representative of the people that I am not going to grab or usurp a position here, but I have been told that if we want to take receipt of what has been pledged to the Republic, we must initially start with the formal placement of a provisional executive branch of government. So he put it to the grand juries. The grand juries voted. I don't remember the exact date, but it was roughly early August. And we had a 94% approval of that proposal. That meant that 3 of the 50 republics either abstained or voted no. But 47 of them did vote yes. Of the requirement, we needed a 2/3 quorum of the 50 republics, and we had that. So Tim was, at that time, made or approved by the grand juries, or the 50 republics, to be the provisional president of the newly established or re-established reformed Republic of the United States. He had a structure or a support committee that's kind of changed and evolved with other events that took place that we're not going to go into the detail. Suffice it to say, the other 2 elders did not like the direction it was going. They had a different idea. They went a different way. They're still pursuing what they're pursuing. But at this point, we have continued to put into place the proper and required structures of government, which is why we're here today.
Amen. Right.
First, what Tim put to us was, okay, he has been approved as the president. He has a support presidential committee. And the next step is we need a national Congress. So the juries came together, and we selected first also a governor, de jure governor for each of the republics. When the other 2, let me digress a minute, when the other 2 elders went their way, there was some breaking up of the ranks, so to speak. There was some issues that some of the coordinators for each of the republic, and the leaders of each republic was either a state coordinator, not either, but a state coordinator and a foreman of the grand jury. So there were basically 100 people who were leading the 50 republics. So some of those leaders decided to go the other direction. So there was a little bit of a diminishing of the quorum that we required, but we came together. By the time we convened, all of the states, or all the republics, elected a governor, 2 senators, which we now refer to as statesmen, and 10 delegates, which would be the equivalent of Congress. At the time the vote or the convening of that National Congress took place, 40 of the 50 republics had properly done all of that. Since that time, 4 more came on pretty quickly after that, and at this time we have all 50, or most of them, properly convened.
Yeah.
So that Congress did convene. We have a couple of our delegates here today representing the California Republic, and I want to emphasize that these are provisional. Okay, people do say, well, you know, this wasn't voted on by the majority of the people. It doesn't matter. When the revolution started in 1776, 58 men signed the Declaration. It didn't need millions to sign it, or hundreds of thousands. It just needed a jural body to base what they did in law and to make their declaration. Okay? That Declaration of Independence has never been negated or refuted by any of the powers of this entire world. And as it says in there, we have the right and we have the duty to do exactly what we're doing. We do not need any other authority. As long as we don't break any law or do anything contrary to anything we're bound to. So, and what we're doing is rebuilding piece by piece, step by step, the entire infrastructure that we need to fully qualify as a fully reconvened republic. So we sent our 12 delegates. Initially that was going to be physically to a location that was acquired in Michigan. That was not practical. We could not get, at that time yet, access to the funds that I referred to. So the Congress convened telephonically. And it was done in such a way that it was very highly documented. Everybody who attended that was properly identified and properly entered into the record and properly voted. The vote was a confirmation first of the executive branch, the provisional president, and a couple other elements. There were, before that convening, each republic also selected or elected a Chief Justice of a Supreme Court for the Republic. And then during that phone call meeting, I believe it was five, was it five? Five justices of the National Supreme Court were seated. Okay, so that was about middle of August, about 2 months ago. In the meantime, what was then put into place was the understanding that now we had to come back to the ground level. We had to come back to the people, because this is a government by, and for the people. And that is where the authority lies. So structures were put in place, which brings us to why we're here today. To make it very simple for an individual to assume the capacity as a sovereign within the republic. And so several key documents were put in place. They were worked on over a period of weeks, refined and edited, and to the point of what we have today. Every individual has the right and the capacity to simply declare their sovereign rights. And based on their sovereign rights, to come together in Republican form and be part of what we're doing as a Republican form of government of and by the people. So there are two documents that are available for anybody who chooses to do that. One is called the Declaration of Sovereign Rights. The other is called a Jural, what's the exact title? Jural Covenant. Yeah, Jural Covenant of Office. And we're going to briefly go through those. Do we have those up on the screen? No. Yes. Okay. Who's in charge of that computer? Gary? Can we get the Declaration of Sovereign Rights up there? So we're starting with the fundamental building block, which is you, the individual, we, the people. In order to be a qualified elector, to come onto the land in the Republic, remember when I said that the whole name of the game was to control and own all the land in the line of the king? Well, today the king has a representative, which is called the federal United States. It's still backed by a structure that is the same as it's been for hundreds and thousands of years in the form of a king. And we're not going to go into the detail of that, but suffice to say that the name of the game is you cannot be sovereign unless you are truly on the land. All of the ownership of houses and property in what's called the equity system is a form of commerce and a form of binding attachment that does not allow us to be whole, does not allow us to be on the land. So you will see, if you're not familiar with it yet, often references, phrasing in documents that say on the land or on the free dry soil of the California Republic, something like that. The reference to dry soil is because the whole structure that I've been referring to is in admiralty jurisdiction. And so there's this illusion created within the legalistic gyrations of the system that we are actually in the water of the seas and controlled under admiralty and the rules that apply to that. So we want to be on the free dry soil, we want to be on the land, we want to be on the republic. And we want to declare and retain our sovereign rights. So how do we do that? We simply sign and witness and enter into the record our Declaration of Sovereign Rights held by indigenous power. So what's up there? Is it? Okay. Okay, I'm going to read through this and just give a brief explanation of what this is saying. In the beginning, Almighty God created all men and women equal, that they are created with inherent sovereign rights held by indigenous power and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Unalienable rights means they cannot be transferred, they cannot be liened. They are absolute. They are bestowed upon or retained in our inherent sovereign capacity, endowed by the Creator, and indigenous because indigenous means natural, native to the soil. And that doesn't necessarily mean an indigenous tribe, or it doesn't even need to be that you were born on this soil. If you inhabit on the land, in the soil, and you choose to declare your rights and come back onto the land, into the sovereign capacity, in republic, with others as co-equal, then you have that absolute authority. Amen. A republic is established when one people mutually pledge their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to one another as a state in common. So we are pledging together to form that common state. And some people have brought up the question, are we pledging our fortunes in the form of what we have in the bank or our property or what have you? And I personally define that more as pledging our destiny. We are coming together in mutual support with a common goal, common state, and our common destiny.
Amen. Yes. Right.
In republic, they delegate by constitution certain authority derived from their inherent sovereign rights held by indigenous power, and therefrom governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed and exercised as surrogate power by elected officials or office holders. When surrogate power office holders assume the rights of indigenous power, a republic inverts into democracy, and that's what we have. We have the inversion of what was originally limited delegated power and authority that became inverted and became exponentially expanded to become dominant and then eventually absolute and despotic in what we see going on today. Democratic, corrupted surrogate power has no authority of its own. Therefore, I declare by Almighty God in peaceable one people assembly, to wit, a covenant affirmation. So we're basically taking back our power. They do not have power of their own, they do not have authority of their own, and we have the capacity to retain it and recall it. Therefore, I declare, I am created equal to all men and women with inherent sovereign rights held by indigenous power. I therefore solemnly publish and declare, I am absolved, which means removed from or disassociated, by this declaration from all political allegiance foreign to the Republic of the United States of America. Therefore, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence in one people assembly for the Republic, I affirm I am lawfully, naturally born, or lawfully settled in California. In order to form a more perfect republic, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for our republic and our posterity, I consent in one people assembly to delegate certain authority derived from my inherent rights and sovereign power in republic by constitution, in exchange for the protections, freedoms, rights, and lawful recognition as being free in the Republic of the United States of America, and for the support of this declaration. With a firm reliance on divine providence, I hereby pledge my life, fortune, and sacred honor to our Republic, state, and common. By absolute autograph under witness protection, this declaration of sovereign rights is absolute supreme in the Republic. That's a very simple but very profound document. It says everything it needs to say. What we're doing in coming together, what we're going to do by delegated authority by Constitution, limited capacity to support and defend the rights and requirements of the people. Put the servants back in the little room, little quarters in the room of the Republic, and then put the federal servants where they belong in the basement, keeping the heater on, keeping the air conditioning working. So it is as simple as that for anybody who chooses to come into the Republic to sign this. It is signed. You retain a copy. You fax it to a central receipt place, or it can be scanned and emailed. And then you become a qualified elector of the people on the land in the California Republic. There's a page of definitions that really attaches to and is part of that declaration. And there's also an explanation for both of these two documents. We also have a Declaration of Independence that people sign. All of the delegates and the statesmen and the elected office holders that we have already or will soon put into office, it's required to re-sign or sign individually the declaration, and it's an option if you want to sign it and include it in your documents. Then secondly, there's a Jural Covenant of Office for Republic State Settlement. What that basically means is we're coming together as a Jural assembly. Jural comes from the same Latin root as where we get jurisdiction, which means law. That's where de jure is derived from. It basically means of law, of the basis of law. In fact, where those definitions go. I'll give you the exact. Jural means of or relating to rights of law. A jural assembly is a body politic by right of law and for that purpose. Jural authority is the right of law retained by the people. So when you choose to sign the Jural Covenant, which by the way is also optional, you do not have to sign the Jural Covenant. If you want to come into the Republic by signing the declaration, that's sufficient. But most people do choose to sign the Jural Covenant. It means you are coming into the Jural Assembly. You are choosing to be part of the body politic that holds the law. Because we, the people, are the highest authority in law in this Republic. And as you can observe from the current system of the inverted structure from the 1870s onward, that the people have been put down at the lowest level. They are acted upon and presumed to be bonded guarantors for the perpetual debt. And when the corporation was put into bankruptcy in 1933, what was pledged against that bankruptcy for the recreation of new circulating medium public funds, what we call money, was the bonded surety of the people and all their possessions. So that's why we can be acted upon as required to follow all the codes and statutes. Until we separate from the presumption of that authority, then they do have contractual and jurisdictional capacity to act upon us as being required to follow those rules. Conversely, we now are reestablishing our capacity as the highest authority in law. So if you choose to do that or be part of that, doesn't mean that you're not going to be part of the body politic, but taking a jural covenant of office means you're part of the jural assembly, out of which we will derive grand juries, trial juries, office holders, anybody who is going to act by authority and for the people to enforce the law. And we'll get into that as the day progresses. Okay? So basically, it says, Californian jurist in Riverside County Settlement. Now in Republic, I hereby declare that my inherent sovereign rights are held by indigenous power, which is derived from your Declaration of Sovereign Rights, and with the one people in Republic. I mutually pledge my life and fortune with a firm reliance on divine providence. I am sentient and of free will, and hereby pledge my sacred honor to jural duty, meaning to uphold the law. By covenant, I accept the duty to perform the responsibility of a jurist serving in California Republic. I, my name, to solemnly affirm my jural covenant with status as a lawful Californian in Riverside County Settlement. I will support, preserve, protect, and defend the State Republic Constitution, 2010, Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1776, Original Jurisdiction, Republic of the United States of America Constitution, circa 1789, and the Constitution of the Republic of the United States of America, 2010, in America, nation, settlement. I will perform and fulfill all jural duties in Republic and administer the law of the land of this Republic with respect to its people faithfully, impartially, peacefully, honorably, and never contrary to the law of Almighty God, presenting no one through envy, hatred, malice, covetousness, or ill will, and leaving no one unrepresented because of fear, favor, affection, reward, or enticements, investigating with restraint all matters of knowledge that have been brought forth unto me in such impartial capacity, keeping all such counsel and deliberations at all times secret for the protection of the people. I solemnly affirm to do all of this to the best of my ability and understanding as a sacred covenant with the local county settlement people as a Californian and in covenant with the Almighty Creator, so help me God. And then you apply your autograph. We do not call it simply a signature because your autograph is your capacity to enter contract. So, and it's witnessed, and it goes along with the Declaration of Sovereign Rights. So, what we are going to do today is there's a lot of people who've already entered these documents onto the record and are part of the Jural Assembly of the California Republic. The next step is for us to come together in all the counties of the California Republic and then the other republics, same thing, all of their counties, and form a Jural Assembly at the local level with entering into all those who have entered into the Republic, entering into the Constitution for the local county settlement. And what we're going to do is take about 30 to 45 minutes for everybody who wants to, who has not signed these documents, to do so now. And then we will come back. What time is it? Is that 10 to 2 or 10 after?
10 after.
10 after, okay. Well, we're really almost on schedule. So let's take till I think we can do it in a half an hour, and we'll take whatever we need. Everybody who wants to can sign, and then we'll take a little bit of break. We'll convene about 3 or a little after 3, and then from 3 to 5, we're going to go over the county constitution, and I'm going to fill you in a lot more detail of exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, etc., why we're doing it, and we'll also do question and answers. And after we form the Constitution, I'm going to talk about the procedure of then creating the offices and specific functions that become the nucleus and the base for our county body of self-governance, and what we do from there. What does this mean? What does it mean in relationship to our relationship to the de facto government? What does it mean in relationship to the debts that are still attached to the vehicle that is used to create debt, et cetera, et cetera. So, which all gets down to, how does this relate to us on a personal, individual, family, community level? Where is our remedy? What does this mean for us to protect ourselves, protect our families, our land, our bodies, all the rest of it from the intrusion that's happening all around us? So we'll get into all that after we do the break. So, hang on, one question.
I guess there's two questions then. It would seem that I would want to know those things we want to discuss afterwards before I sign this. I want to know, like, what am I getting into?
Okay.
And that question is pales in comparison to that one. And that is just curious as to what do you think is in it for those money groups? Like, why would they be interested in having a say in this process? Nobody gives up their money for free, so their possession for free.
Okay. I'll address the second one later. The first question was, it would seem that he would want to know the detail of what we're going to do afterwards before he signs the individual documents. I'll come back to that in a minute. The second question is, those sources of pledged assets and funds, why would they do that? That's a good question. I will address that. If I somehow forget to before, you ask it again. Later, when we do question and answer, I'm going to ask Shannon to help with a microphone, so because we're recording this, so we can get your questions on recording, but I've just repeated yours. I'm not going to take any more questions before our break, except that's a very good one. Let's address that. First of all, nobody is required to sign those documents. We need a minimum assembly of 25 individuals in the Republic to properly convene and enter the Constitution. We already have that, so it's not an issue. So you don't need to sign these documents now. It's definitely not like, oh, you better sign up, or you're not going to get your downline or something like that, or anything like that. This is an individual choice, and at any time. This is not going to go away. This is available. When we properly convene the county and through the Constitution, we are going to start building an entire county-level lawful government, which is going to include a governing body, a judiciary, the ability to seek and create and institute remedy for issues like against foreclosure, tax invasion, not evasion, but invasion by those so-called tax collectors, many other issues. So it's not required that you do this now or ever, but we're going to be here, and this is the beginning. So if you have any questions, and there's a concern at that level, then I would say don't execute the documents now. Watch the rest of the day, and we have enough to accomplish what we're here to do anyways, and be a witness to it, and then decide later, and that's not a problem. Yes?
I just wanted to make a statement that it's taken me months to get to the place and understanding that I'm ready to sign the document. It's not something that can be explained to you today if you're new to this process.
I will say also, and thank you for that, for purposes of the recording, she said, for her own individual personal process, it's taken her months of becoming familiar with what's going on and to make this decision. Right now, there's probably nationwide maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people in that range who have done what I'm referring to in terms of signed the documents and entered into the Republic. I would really estimate that this time next year we will be in the millions.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that. We are the nuclei, county by county, because that's the building block. The building block is the individual and the individuals who come together at the county local level, and then the counties build the state republic, and the state republics build the national republic. So it's a reverse hierarchy. We're not dealing with a top-down control. We are building it from the bottom, and we are the ultimate power. So we are instituting the nucleus of this county, as other counties in California and others in the other republics are doing now or in the very near future. And I see it as a magnet. People are going to start coming in. There's some other elements that I'll talk about later in the afternoon relative to other events that are unfolding very quickly at a national and a global level, that there's a criticalness to why we need to do this and do it now. So with that, let's take the break and let's have some fun, sign some docs.